Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started because I know we have busy afternoons, everybody, and I think everybody's anxious and excited to hear from our two speakers today, and then we'll talk a little bit about, we'll have a business meeting shortly thereafter. I don't think it'll take near an hour and a half unless you all have a lot of questions, but we do have a couple of exciting things to talk about with our working party. But I wanted to welcome you to our IUFRO working party. This is the third session of 3. And again, not to be a broken record, but I really do appreciate my colleague, Bob Barden, who evidently I must have insulted by not going to visit more often when I was a 113th employee of NC State University. But Bob is a stalwart. I appreciate your leadership within our organization, Bob, and I look forward to many more opportunities to work together with you. But if things are going well, you can give me the credit. If things are going poorly, Bob is the reason for all that, right?
Yep.
Bob, if you have any, I don't know if you have any logistical updates. I do know that you have recorded and will record this one, and then they are up on our EKE website, which I'll send a link to in the chat box, and we can also go to that during our business meeting. But we are, we've got a presence online with the IUFRO website, and Bob has recorded both of the previous meetings, I believe, on YouTube, so they're very easy to get and of the highest quality. So was there anything else on that front, Bob?
No, I've posted the link to them in the chat. So
oh, thank you.
Get it there.
Okay, and please don't leave here without to the well, I don't know if we're going to send out the evaluation right after this meeting, or if Bob, you're going to send those out to everybody.
No, so the evaluation, what we'll do is we'll mail it out to all attendees. That way we capture everybody that has participated. So that'll be a separate email.
Sounds good. We typically have not done introductions in these sessions just because of the time. But if you do have a minute and wouldn't mind going into the chat box and introducing yourself and your title, and then where you're from around the world, around the United States, wherever we have here. And we'll get an idea who we have online. Looks like we've got a few more coming in. Great. Okay, well, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get our program started for today. I also see that Mark McGallis has joined us. And Mark, thank you very much for hosting last week, for facilitating, I should say. You did a fantastic job. You did a great job, even when I sped you up at 1.5 times when I reviewed the recording. So I appreciate that. I owe you a big time favor. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and we'll get into our first presenter here.
I've already stopped your sharing, Bill.
You did? I was going to say, how did that happen? You're kind of hurrying me along. I thought I had till 1:10.
No, I just wanted everybody to be able to see your smiley face.
I appreciate that.
You want me to stop, Bill, so you can keep monologuing, or I can give you the floor again?
I'm a stickler for time, so I don't know if anybody has any comments before we get started. I don't want to rush us into the program. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I see a couple of new ones out there. So I don't know if anybody had a couple quick questions about the program that we conduct. We try to do something like this at least once a year and try to get together at least annually or every other year at an international venue. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But other than that, just welcome everybody. And yeah, anybody have any questions before we get started? Okay, well, we'll get started then. So Dave, if you would like to share your screen, I can introduce you if you'd like. So Dave Coyle and I go back a few years. Dave worked at the University of Georgia for several years, and then I guess saw the light and took a job as an assistant professor at Clemson University in Forest Health. And Dave has lots of experience in many areas, but one in particular is the South Carolina Bradford Pear Bounty Program. So Dr. Coyle, take it away.
Thanks, Bill. Hello, everyone. So let's get cranking. Again, I'm Dave Coyle at Clemson University here in Clemson, South Carolina in the States. And since not everyone may be familiar with the issue of Bradford and calorie pair that we have, I thought we'd talk a little bit about that whole issue. So the Bradford pear is this tree, extremely popular, very common street tree planted all over the Southeast and lots of the East as well. It's for a long time was your prototypical street tree, urban tree. It's got a nice, decent form, very pretty flowers, obviously, a nice colorful fall foliage. But unfortunately, it smells quite pungent, the flowers do. There's a lot of really interesting descriptors that people have of them out there. The tree also breaks extremely easily. It's got a really poor branching structure. So when it gets 15, 20 years old, it tends to just fall apart. So the reason we have this tree is because of this bacterial disease called fire blight. So around 1900, when the US was just starting their pear industry, they brought European pears, Pyrus communis, over, and they were trying to produce pears, and they kept getting this bacterial disease fire blight. And you can see a picture of it here. It affects the leaves and the fruits. It sort of makes them just sort of dry up and wilt. And one of the big issues is this thing is not easily overcome because it's spread by pollinators, and pollinators are what you need to make fruit. So what they did was they knew that there was a species of pear from China that was pretty resistant to fire blight. This is Pyrus caloriana, common name calorie pear. So they brought some of these over to see if they could graft these and try and get ahead of this fire blight issue. It worked tentatively, and they needed some more specimens for experiments. And so what they did was they sent over this guy, Frank Meyer, who is this well-known plant collector. And back in the day, this was something that would get you famous. He basically became famous for collecting plants. And you see, he's actually sitting here with a little burlap sack of Pyrus caloriana at his feet, getting ready to bring those back over. He is a very, again, well-known famous guy in those circles. There's a medal named after him. There's also a lot of foods named after him. If you've ever had a Meyer lemon, those are named after Frank Meyer. So Frank Meyer got these Pyrus caloriana from China, brought them over to the States, and it worked, right? So this helped save that pear industry in the US. And the way they did that was by grafting. So they grafted a scion from an edible pear, so one of those Pyrus communis, and then you would put it onto the rootstock of a calorie pear. So this process was ongoing. Pears were working, but then as they had a bunch of these outplantings up in Glendale, Maryland, which is kind of the mid-Atlantic region of the U.S., there was a lot of these planted at this station. This fella right here, John Creech, who is the horticulturalist in charge. This is the guy we have to blame for this entire mess that we're in right now. He noticed that some of these selections had value as horticultural trees. They were disease resistant, drought resistant, pollution resistant. A lot of them, nothing really fed on them. And if you're looking for an urban street tree, you're looking for something that's hardy, nothing eats it, and will just basically grow anywhere, and you can not care for it and it does well. And that's what a lot of these are. A lot of the Pyrus caloriana had thorns on them, large thorns, but he did notice that one selection was thornless. So one individual was a thornless one. It was super pretty and it just couldn't be killed. And so he thought this is the perfect street tree. And he named it Bradford after the former station director. Now, in this part of the world, the Bradford pears get drugged quite a bit. I can only assume this Mr. Bradford was just there doing his thing, being retired, and all of a sudden realizes his name is getting trashed. But they created Bradford pears in the same way they created fruit trees, in that they grafted them. So any Bradford pear, the top, the scion, is going to be genetically the same. It's the same thing. It's just cuttings taken off a tree. And then all the bottoms are going to be that same species, but a lot different. So this is going to be really important. This was commercially released in 1961. And any of you who work with invasive species, you know this is a harbinger of things to come, because even just 3-4 years after that, they realized that this had escaped cultivation. That's just a fancy way of saying it has gone wild. They also noticed that once the trees got to be about 20 years old, there were bad structural problems. But that said, there was a lot of sales, millions of dollars in sales every year. And so they just kept creating new cultivars to hopefully get around the issues it had. So things they knew again that there was that branch issues about 25 to 30 years old. This picture is not one that is, your worst case scenario. For those of you that aren't aware, this is a very standard thing that Bradford pears do when they get to be about this age. They've got this horrible branch structure where it starts, 3-4 foot stem, and then all the branches just sort of go straight up with really tight branch angles. They break in wind, they break in snow, they break in ice, they break if you look at them funny. This is something they knew. They also knew that if you had only Bradford pears around, you'd get no seeds. So they're self-incompatible. So they were promoted as sterile, right? It's not necessarily the same thing. It just means if you've got a neighborhood and all that's planted is Bradford pears, then you won't get any seeds because, again, that tree can't self-pollinate. But it just takes one person or one tree to be different, a pyrus of some other species, a pyrus of another cultivar, even a shoot growing off the rootstock of a Bradford is different. So that can then pollinate all this other stuff. So they knew it had all these issues, but their response, again, remember, this thing is making millions of dollars. It was just sort of like, so what, who cares? This is making lots of money. I think one of the quotes from one of the old timers was, do you realize how many kids this tree has put through college? So it just kept being sold, and it is what it is. And so this is nowadays kind of what we see. And this is an aerial shot close to where I live in North Georgia. You see, you have a line of Bradford pear trees by this house. At this point, there's so much what I call contaminating non-Bradford pollen out there that pretty much every Bradford pear, excuse me, is producing viable seeds at this point. So birds like to go in here, birds eat these, and you can see what birds do after they get a meal is they fly away and they poop. And then that is where you see these calorie pears getting spread all over the place. And this is just a great example of what happens when you've got Bradford pears and then any type of old field or pasture or even semi-abandoned land across or near Bradford pear. These things always just pop up. So now we're in this situation where we've got this wild calorie pear all over the place. We've got it in these old fields. You can see the arrows are pointing to it here. Very rapidly makes a grassland into a shrubland or a woodland. Along the sides of the roads, calorie pear is about the first thing to bloom in the spring. So before anything has leaves, you tend to start seeing these white flowers all over the place. Very common in unsold lots. Here's a few of them outside Madison, Georgia. And then we're, even more importantly, from my perspective, from the forestry perspective, is what was once thought to be just an old field or a roadside issue is now becoming a big issue in actual commercial forests. And this can be some of our pines and lines, our commercial forest plantations. It can also just be natural forest. You're seeing calorie pear become more and more comfortable, so to speak, growing in these areas. This is one of our maps. This is EdMaps, the citizen science, tracking type of map. And this is where it says calorie pear is. This is very incomplete. It's probably, their actual range is probably closer to this, which is probably, almost everything in the eastern US. So they're definitely all over the place and they're a big issue, but who cares, right? Because they are super pretty. It's just another tree. And like my mom says, it's so beautiful. Why would you want to kill it, David? Well, Mom, because a bunch of reasons. The first one is that it's a super ecological menace. It's got these thorns, and from a management perspective, these are extremely strong. They pop a lot of tires, and any landowner who tries to clear these things off their property, unless you're using something with a metal track like a skidder, you're going to pop tractor tires or trailer tires or four-wheeler tires or truck tires. It costs landowners a lot of time and a lot of money to try to get rid of these things once they are on there. They take over lots and lots of different natural areas. And we just finished up a master's student, Shawani Sapkata at the University of Tennessee. And she did a bunch of different genetic work. And she basically found that from an invasive plant genetics perspective, calorie pear is the perfect invasive. It has all the characteristics you could imagine. If you were to create the perfect invasive tree, this is pretty much it. High gene flow, high variability, lots of alleles, all of these things just mean this thing is very adaptable and very, very invasive. From an ecological perspective, it crowds out everything native to where the only thing you find underneath, in a calorie pear thicket is other calorie pears, because it just blocks the sunlight and creates this really dense overstory. So it's not a good thing. And also because very few things eat it, it's got no ecological value from birds or from a wildlife perspective, really. I mean, sure, birds will use it for nests, but there's not really a good use for this tree. So what do we do now? We've been working on a lot of different ways on how do we get rid of this thing? How do we manage it? Fire is used very often in the southeastern US. Can you kill it? That's a hard no. We've seen data that shows from anywhere from 2 to 12 new sprouts come from every stem that is killed by fire. So that is not going to work. Can you use biocontrol? Again, absolutely not. There's nothing that really eats this thing. And again, that was one of the characteristics they liked of it, is that nothing ate it. We've done a lot of herbicide trials. Can we kill it with chemicals? And the answer is yes, right? So there's lots of different things work. This is from a paper a couple of years ago we did on smaller trees, 6 feet or so or less. And, any of these chemicals work. Our most recent data with larger trees, same thing. Herbicides work, but you gotta put them out. And with that, you have sort of the public perception, right? Because there's a good chunk of the population that does not want pesticides being used. So what's our other option if you can't do that? We decided a couple of years ago to come at this from a different angle and use the community engagement. And so there had been a Bradford Pear bounty in 2019 at the city of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I spoke with them about how they did that. They basically rewarded people for cutting down their Bradford pear tree. And this is, reaching people is extremely important because a lot of these things can still be obtained by people and promoted. You can get, this is Kogon grass, wisteria. You can still buy Pyrus caloriana cultivars. You can still get these online and at box stores and that type of thing. So educating people on what is and is not a good thing to plant is kind of our number one priority here. And so to do that, we started our Bradford Pear Bounty program. This is our webpage, but our main goals here were to raise awareness about what the issue is, how the Bradford pear in your yard turns into calorie pear everywhere else. To educate people about the importance of planting native species and not non-native species in their yards. And then finally, to help diversify some of these urban tree canopies. We've been through Dutch elm disease where all the elms died, and then ash was planted and emerald ash borer killed all those. We need to have a more diverse urban tree canopy. So who is responsible for the Bradford Pear Bounty? This is an effort led by Clemson Extension, myself and our team, and then our State Forestry Commission. And then we partner with whatever local municipality or business wants to partner with us. So there's a lot of different avenues we go here. And the roles here, and this is how we have set this up. Clemson Extension's role is to do most of the advertising and public facing stuff. So this is putting together the materials for the advertising, doing a lot of the promotional things. We have done talks and interviews with all sorts of state agencies and entities, regional entities, national entities. We've reached out to the press a lot, the Associated Press and New York Times. They have done some very big stories on this tree, and it gets a lot of traction. And one of the things, that we always, I think a lot of us struggle with in extension is how do you reach the people that you can't easily reach, right? Because anytime you're talking with the general public, there's a chunk of them, I should say, that are your followers, so to speak, and they'll listen to you and they'll do the things that you recommend. There's a lot of people that are tougher to reach, they're maybe not dialed into Clemson or Cooperative Extension. So by reaching out to some of these different press agencies, we get a lot bigger reach. A story in the Associated Press goes nationwide. They did a write-up in the New York Times that went, nationwide and beyond. And we work a lot with the news, the local news in whatever city we're in. I was just actually doing an interview on Bradford Pear this morning with one of the local TV. And this is a good way to reach a lot of different people that normally wouldn't get our extension newsletters or be connected that way. So it's a really valuable thing. One thing we found is that Bradford pears, because they are so well known, they elicit all sorts of very strong responses, most of them negative, some of them positive, but most of them negative. And you can see this is just a couple examples of Facebook posts where you have thousands and thousands, hundreds of comments and thousands of likes and reactions just on one particular post. We were routinely told by some of the news folks that the Facebook post about the story they did on the Bradford Pear Bounty was for, sometimes days or even weeks, the most trafficked story they had. And that's great. That allows us to reach tens or hundreds of thousands of people to tell them about what the issue is. So reaching people is one of our main goals. And we also have a very comprehensive webpage we've developed at this point. This is just the headings of what we have. So this webpage essentially takes people through what is the program, what are Bradford pears, why are they invasive, and what is invasive. We talk about what are your replacement tree options, sponsors. In some cases we have sponsors, and then there's some FAQs, that type of thing. So Clemson Extension more or less does all the communication. The Forestry Commission helps with communication and also helps with a lot of the logistics. So the urban forestry folks at Clemson, at the South Carolina Forestry Commission help that local municipality decide on tree species and order tree species. They then do that. And then the local municipality is, think of it as your local arrangements. They find a place to hold the event. They take care of the trees when they get there. And then so the day of the event, people come, they show us a picture of their cut down Bradford pear, and then we give them a free replacement tree, up to 5. So that's all we require. We require people to come bring us a picture of your Bradford pear that you've cut down, and we will give you a replacement tree. And we get trees that are pretty good stock. They're in 3-gallon pots. They range from 2 to 6 feet tall. People feel really good about getting that, an actual tree instead of just a little seedling or something. So this is how the program works. So one thing I don't want to say struggled, we've thought a lot about is how do we measure impact of our Bradford pear bounty? It's fairly straightforward to measure your standard things like the number of event locations, 6 so far, number of events, we've had 8 so far, number of participants, and number of trees, right? So we tend to do about 250 trees per event, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, kind of varies based on where we are and the resources we have. And one thing we've started doing is, when we do these events, we fill out a survey, which I'll talk about in a minute, but that gives us the address of where these trees are going to be put in the ground. And so with that, we can create these maps. Okay. And this is a map just from one of our Clemson events. It shows you that people came from several counties around, not just the city of Clemson, or not just Oconee County. They came from several counties, in some cases as far away as, 150 miles they would drive over for this thing. So it's going to be able to give us a really good indication of where these trees are going and how many are going in certain places, because now we've had events across most of the state. And I mentioned a survey. We have every participant fill out a survey. And on that survey, we ask them several things. We ask about their knowledge of invasive species, their knowledge of Bradford pears and Callery pears. Do they know the difference? How long the Bradford pears had been on their property, where they learned about the event, why they participated, and then of course demographic information. We're just trying to get as much information as we can about folks in this program so we can better tailor our advertising and maybe better tweak the program if need be. And we are in the early stages of some of this follow-up work too. It's been 3 years since our first, almost 3 years since our first events. We want to know, were the trees that these people got, were they actually planted, right? Did they actually get in the ground? This was the objective. And are they still alive? So we kind of want to know, what is basically our retention for this program? Has it worked and how has it gone? So these are things all on the doc. So, to recap, calorie repair management is super difficult. It's obviously best to prevent this thing. And we feel that this particular program has been just amazing in terms of getting people aware of what Bradford pears are, what the issue is, what the connection is between the Bradford and their lawn, and all the white stuff you see, all over the roadsides every spring. And so we're really just getting started on this. And so at this point, thanks to all my collaborators, and I'd be happy to take questions, comments, because again, we're always trying to get this thing a little bit better.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. All right. How many people are going to do a program like this in their state? I know I am.
Oh, I see a question, Bill. You want me to handle it?
Yes, please.
All right. From Kim Ingram, how are the replacement trees paid for and who provides them? That varies based on the municipality. So some municipalities, like the city of Clemson, the way it works is so we are a college town, obviously. So when a new development is put in, or a new apartment, that builder either needs to replace a certain number of trees, or they pay a fine. I don't want to say a fine, a fee, right? And then these fees in this case go into the city horticulturalist pot of money that he can spend for whatever. So in some cases, the city will, or the municipality pays for the trees directly. In other cases, we have had sponsors like Duke Energy, one of our big power companies here, has paid for them. They are very excited about this program because, to quote them, so to back up, the trees we get from a nursery, they're roughly $10 a piece delivered. So for 250 trees, you're really only looking at $2,500 or so. To someone like Duke Energy, that is a drop in the bucket. And, I was told that $2,500 to them is just one or two tree prunings from a tree that's already in a power line. So this gives them a really good way to donate some money to a good cause, gets them some very positive press. Duke has essentially told us they're happy to support any of these anywhere in their jurisdiction at this point. So that's the two main ways these trees get paid for. Some cities have more money disposable than others, and then other times we just get it from sponsorships like that. And that, to me, I think is a good partnership too. That allows that power company to do something positive. We let them have a booth there. We name drop when we do the interviews and all that type of thing. And yeah, as Bob said, North Carolina just had one of these, and I've had discussions with several neighboring states about this program. I will say the public perception is 99% very much for it. There's a lot of people that cannot stand these trees. There's 1% that have already dug their heels in and said, I love mine and I will never do anything with it. And they generally get jumped on pretty harshly in the Facebook comments and stuff. Everyone tends to jump on them. David, hey, David, I didn't catch the stumps resprout. If so, does the program provide guidance on how to deal with that regrowth? Yes, we've got a number of, on that main page, we've got, I think one of the subheadings is proper tree removal. There's videos on there by the Forestry Commission, how to properly remove that tree, treat the stump with herbicide. And that's something we say ad nauseum. If you just cut that tree down, you're going to have a field of sprouts coming back. We say that as much as we can, is you need to treat that stump or it's going to grow back. Of course, we still get a lot of people who say it grew back. I cut one down, I got 50 more, but we do all we can. One thing we are not allowed to do is remove any trees. Our legal team was very clear on that. So all we can do is, provide all the possible information we can to try to get people to do it the right way.
Dave, time for one more quick question. Dave, you might have mentioned this, sorry, but how many, you said there are other states interested. How many have actually begun the work? Did I see somewhere that Kentucky is doing it with?
Yeah, Ellen did one in Kentucky, and then Kelly did that one up there in North Carolina. I've talked to folks from Tennessee, Georgia, and Virginia also. So I think there's, and it's the toughest part is getting them started, and it took us a little bit to get it going, but I am happy to advise at this point. I mean, I think I was saying earlier before we got on to everyone, we are booked through spring of 24 with municipalities that want to do one of these. So all I can handle is about 3 in spring and 2 in the fall. So we're booked out quite a ways already.
That's awesome. And I know being with Extension, you're measuring your impact data. And
yeah, we have stacks of data at this point. I'm not totally sure how I will use it yet, but we've got lots of data that we're starting to go through. And, like I said, this will be about 3 years. So we're going to follow up with everyone we can via email and try to get information on how those trees are doing. We have everyone's contact information that participated. So that's one of the good things. So we do have people register online. It's a free program, but that at least allows us to get contact information for folks.
I can't help but think of the impacts on the environment and biodiversity and our native, not just trees, but our native plants and our wildlife populations, our pollinators. I mean,
yeah,
it's just a tragedy driving down roads up here outside of between Annapolis and College Park, and it's a sea of white in the spring, which, the flowers are pretty, but then you just know what it's done to that native ecosystem. Of course, being on the highway, it probably better.
Yeah, and one of the things we tell folks, sometimes it's tough to convince people that the tree is bad, and cute animals are a good way to get in there. And so, a lot of those insect feeding birds take several thousand caterpillars to raise a clutch from egg to fledging. And I have looked at easily thousands of Bradford and calorie pears in my life here and maybe seen a handful of insects on them total. They're just like a food desert for birds. And saying things like telling people things like that really has it set home for them like, oh, maybe these things aren't great. So when you see that big field of calorie pears, there's like nothing for insect feeding birds to eat out there. So that's another way we try to reach people is come at it a little different way. Everyone's heard all the invasives are bad thing, but sometimes we got to go a little different route.
Tailoring your message to your audience. Excellent. Well, thank you. A round of applause for Dr. Dave.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And quick plug for Dave's Facebook, one of Dave's outreach tools, if he put it in the box, but the Southern Forest Health Facebook group is a wonderful resource for people that have questions about tree and forest health. And it's not just a Southern thing, right? You end up with questions from really all over. So it's a great use of social media, Facebook, to get questions answered. And we also did some impact work on that a few years ago. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, Hope, if I could get you to share your screen, we'll move on to our next presentation. And Hope Braithwaite with Utah State University. She's a water quality specialist out west, and it is great to go from East Coast to West Coast here. And she's going to talk about poop, sources and solution of waste in waterways. Sorry, I just had to say that. It's the juvenile in me, but a big issue, no doubt. So Hope.
Yeah, no, you're great. That's a great introduction. And yeah, quite a turn from, I thought it was super interesting listening to the previous talk. That's definitely an area that I'm not as familiar with. And so that's kind of fun having, yeah, these different topics that we can learn about. So yeah, my name is Hope Braithwaite. I'm with Utah State University. And I'm in the WATS department, but then I also have an extension or watershed sciences department, but also have an extension appointment. I want to say thank you to the organizers. I recently helped organize a conference, and I feel like there's so much that happens in the background to put these things together. And so huge thank you. I don't think I was aware of how much goes on before I actually helped organize something like this. So thank you for doing that. And thank you to everyone that's participating. I know we're all super busy. So thanks for taking the time to tune into this. So yeah, let's get started and talk about poop in waterways and how we're trying to address this issue. So for this presentation, I'll provide a little bit of background about how and why poop in our waterways is an issue. Since you're here and voluntarily listening in, this probably isn't news to you, and you probably already know a little bit about this, but I'll give some background and about how we actually created 2 different outreach campaigns that target a couple of different sources of fecal matter that are in our waterways. And the 2 campaigns are called Gotta Go and Small Farm Neighbor. Then I'll share some future directions we're anticipating with these campaigns, and hopefully leave plenty of time for questions and discussion too. So why is poop in our water bad? Besides a general ew, gross gut reaction, waste contains 2 main types of pollutants that can be harmful. So nutrients and then pathogens. When waste ends up in water bodies, it decomposes and it can release nutrients that cause excess growth of algae. It can also contain harmful bacteria like E. coli and fecal coliform. And it obviously can reduce the aesthetic value of places. In Utah, we have a lot of recreation. A lot of people want to come and enjoy the great outdoors. And so seeing things like these images does not help with that. So to understand the human waste issue, in 2019, we reached out to agencies and land managers who have experience and knowledge of human waste associated with recreational activities. So we talked to about 50 individuals and agencies. This was over the phone. It was also through emails. And we got a response from 33 individuals. So when possible, when we were able to do an interview with them, we got to talk a little bit more and dig into what was going on. There wasn't an opportunity for follow-up if it was an email. Usually people are super busy, which is understandable, but we were able to get to talk to someone from each of the major districts for these management agencies. Yeah, at least one manager was interviewed from every district of the Forest Service and the BLM. So we had a pretty great representation throughout the state. And a lot of people were actually really excited to talk to us because it has been a major issue, and they wanted to talk about it and try and figure out good solutions. So we learned that there were a lot of concerns about management of human waste associated with recreation, and it was widespread across public lands in Utah. 75% of respondents said that human waste practices do pose a problem within the jurisdiction. And the concerns really were based on proper practices depending on the region and then the recreational activity. So whether they're in a desert or a forested area or alpine, that's one amazing thing that I feel like we have here is we have this diversity of environments, but that also makes it tricky of figuring out what you need to do where. And then also on the recreational activity. So whether that's if you're backpacking or camping, if you're river rafting, basically best practices for that recreational type and the environment. So we created our Gotta Go campaign, and our goal is really to educate people on proper management of their human waste when they're visiting our public lands. So we try to do that by catching people's attention on social media, and we have interesting memes. I'll show you a few of those. We have Facebook and Instagram, and then that's kind of the catch, and then we direct them to our website where they can get more information. And I'm gonna try escape that just for a second and put in the chat our website. And actually, while I'm here, maybe I'll just share a little bit on here. So it's really simple. We really are just trying to make it quick and easy for people. At the very start, it's just know how to go, a little bit of what if everyone did it. If one, I guess, horrifying thing that we learned from some managers is they were seeing if there wasn't a dump station nearby, people in RVs were just dumping their gray water and black water wherever. They weren't actually going to a dump station. And so that's not something that you want to see if you're a land manager going out and checking out different places. So know before you go, be prepared, go to the bathroom before you actually recreate. And I really like this quick guide that we have for going in nature. It was great to work with a marketing team that could help with this too, because in my head, I had this very complicated flow chart of what you should do in this instance or that instance, or and it was way too complicated. And they said, okay, what's just a general rule, like in a forest, in a desert, based on these different environments or what you're doing, what can we tell people is like a very general guide. And so this is where you can dig a cat hole, where you actually need to pack it out. And then for dump stations, we actually created a map so that people could find their closest dump stations. So again, we tried to base this off of that survey. We made all of these different pages so that people could know what to do in these different environments that they were recreating in. And then here is our little map with all of the dump stations in Utah. So we tried to get a really good idea of what was open year round, seasonal ones, the address, the cost, if there's a cost, all of that information. So it made it very easy for people to know before they go check out the website, look at the closest dump station to them so that they know when they're driving home where they can dump their waste. We also have some rules and regulations, just so people know that, and then specific situations. So if you want something that's more winter related, climbing, paddling trips, group recreation, we have some women specific resources too. So this is just our very, trying to be friendly and informative and just give people the information they actually need so they can properly go to the bathroom outdoors in these different environments. Oh, whoops. I've done that part. So I just showed you that website and our social media. Here's an example of one of our memes, and I feel like I work with really creative, awesome people. So they come up with these really clever things, and then I'm just happy to latch onto their awesome ideas. So this is an example for a forested area. So dream like a cat, poop like a cat, basically dig your cat hole, make sure it's at least 6 inches deep, and then make sure to cover it after you're done. So we try to keep things pretty light and funny and friendly, and also very shareable too. So people actually share these resources with others. The next campaign that I'll talk about is called our Small Farm Neighbor campaign. And this is really when we talk to people about, mainly this came from the Utah Water Quality Task Force, and they were saying, we're seeing large operations are regulated and they're doing a great job of reducing or not having a lot of waste from animals. If it's a large farming operation, a large producer, they don't have a lot of, we're not concerned with them with water quality as much as the really small ones that they're not regulated, and then they just don't know. So this is our small farm outreach campaign. And so it's really just best practices to help small farmers, neighborhood gardeners, keep Utah's waters healthy and clean. We did a survey with participants and tried to learn more about how long have they been on this property? Are they actually used to farming? Are they used to having animals on their property, or is this something new to them and they need to learn more? And we did this in 2019, and then with the pandemic in 2020, it seemed like it just became even more of a need there, because more people were wanting to farm, wanting to have a small garden, wanting to have a few animals on their property. And so this just provides best practices for water quality if you do have a small acreage. We also have a grant opportunity that's associated with this one. It's one thing to tell people, all right, your cattle have direct access to the spring. That's not a great idea. Let's actually fence them out from the spring and water them somewhere else. And so we worked with the Utah Division of Water Quality and Extension county faculty throughout the state. And this started out in just a few counties in 2019, and we've really expanded it to most counties this last year. We just applied for more grant funding, so hopefully this upcoming season we'll be able to do this statewide. But we give out, it's a grant opportunity that small acreage owners can apply for. It's up to $10,000, and then they have to show that they're doing some type of water quality best management practice. And then we've been doing a small amount of photos and then water quality testing to see the impact of what they're doing. And sorry, these pictures aren't the best, but in the first photo, I realized that there are dogs there, but you can you can see where there were cattle, and they've really trampled down the stream bank, had direct access, and we usually see them defecating in the stream too. And so this was a great area where they actually fenced out a riparian buffer, a buffer along that river, and then had a watering facility away from the river for their cattle. For future directions, we really want to keep these resources current and relevant, and we want to expand collaborations. So we've realized in talking to people that for the human waste campaign, for going to the bathroom on our public lands or while people are recreating in Utah, people have come up to us and said, yes, this is definitely an issue. Another issue is pet waste. There are so many people recreating with their dogs, and so we really need to address that issue too. So we're going to create another page about pet waste too, and how to properly dispose of pet waste. We're working on getting funding to actually have some signs and pet waste stations, especially along the Wasatch Front. Another topic that people have been very interested in that we're developing resources is how to talk to their kids about going to the bathroom outdoors. A lot of parents are wanting to have more resources about that. And so those are kind of ways we want to expand for the human waste campaign. And then for Small Farm Neighbor, we really want to provide more funding, be able to do it statewide. So far, it's only been a few counties in Utah. We're really hopeful that this upcoming season we can offer that grant opportunity throughout the state. And I think that'll have a huge impact. I think we also want to increase the amount of monitoring before and after. So far, it's been more piloted and just been photos and a little bit of water quality monitoring. And so I think expanding that will be super, super helpful. We've also had partners reach out to us to try and get just short informational flyers for a specific area where they have a lot of recreation. Maybe it's a new development and they just have porta potties for now, but just really messaging to people so that they know, at least when they get there, hopefully before, but at least that when they get there, what they should be doing. So I think I'm about out of time, but hopefully have some time for questions. But here's my contact information. Check out gottagoutah.org and also smallfarmneighbor.org. And then I just wanted to give a very quick plug for Utah Water Watch. That's our water quality monitoring volunteer program. So we have volunteers across Utah that are helping with water quality monitoring at lakes, rivers, streams. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to take any questions about that too. So does that work?
Perfect. Thanks, Hope. We do have time for a couple questions or comments or delving into anything you had heard about during Hope's presentation. Really uncomfortable topic to talk about, but very timely. We have big issues in the Chesapeake Bay area with pest and pet waste. So any kind of work in changing behavior and, you know, convincing people to, you know, go the extra mile, so to speak, to keep it out of the waterways is really important. So very timely program, no doubt.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep it as, you know, friendly and humorous, and we don't want it to be a taboo topic. We want people to be able to talk about it, and it's been fun too. I mean, there was one person that we were working with marketing that he was laughing and he was like, man, 4-year-old me would have been so excited that I got to work on a whole campaign about poop. Like, this is just amazing. This is the height of my career. So it is a fun topic in a lot of ways. And so it's just kind of running with it and hopefully making it, funny and friendly and relatable for people. And then they can actually learn about it and use those best practices.
Leslie has a question.
Have you had any particular negative feedback from the public or from other agencies or anything?
That's a really good question. So for the Gotta Go campaign, the human waste one, that one's been positive. I honestly haven't heard anything negative. I guess maybe the only negative thing would be sometimes people are thinking we need to be more strict, like with our pack it out or digging a cat hole. Some people are very much like, you just should pack it out. Like, we shouldn't have people digging cat holes anymore. So I guess we've even gotten a little pushback on the other side of that part of it, but that one's been amazing. And it's interesting to me because we launched these at the same time, and Gotta Go has just taken off, and the Forest Service and BLM, everyone's been sharing that as a resource. And then Small Farm Neighbor has actually been a lot harder. People are not latching onto it as much as I had hoped. I think it's probably a couple of different things. One of them is it's just a lot harder, right? It's way easier for me to get a wag bag if I'm recreating in a desert. It's a lot harder if I'm putting a lot of time and resources into moving animals or changing my fertilization practices or those kinds of things. So I think that's probably part of it.
Great program.
Thank you. Oh, that's great. I'll have to check out that the Consumer Product Safety Commission campaigns. Yeah, I feel like if you can have good graphics and simple messaging, it just makes a huge difference.
I see some research projects too for anybody that's looking for a PhD, right? And on the use of messaging and humor versus some of the traditional messages really brings a lot of good questions to the forefront.
Yeah, we have had a little bit just with our posts that we do. It does seem like we get more likes or shares or those kinds of things on the humorous ones than the more informational type posts. So I guess that's one simple metric we can use to figure that out. But it would be interesting to do more monitoring. We haven't had enough funding at this point to do that, but that could be a cool future thing of actually having someone walk trails and go and see if they're seeing signs of human waste, if they're seeing toilet paper or uncovered waste or whatever it is, doing an educational campaign in that specific area, and then going back and seeing if that changes at all. But yeah, we'll see. Lots of ideas for the future.
Thank you, Hope. I don't know if anybody has anything else. Any other questions for Hope or Dave? Great, thank you both. I appreciate you
Thank you.
batting cleanup today, both of you all. I think, again, we had a great series of presentations, and hopefully those of you that didn't get a chance to view them live can go to the recorded versions. Bob will have these two up, I'm sure, by the end of the day today, if not before. But I did want to, we looks like we technically have a break scheduled before our business meeting, but I think we can just go ahead and move into that if you all wouldn't mind. I don't have a tremendous amount to go over. Again, for those of you that don't know much about our working party, it is the best working party within IUFRO, and it's really the only one in the world that gives us an opportunity to work across countries and time zones and continents and you name it, with the goal of looking at how we can really improve the way that we do the work we do for our various stakeholders and clients, and learn from each other and best practices and, you know, information sharing, networking, commiserating, all those kinds of things. So it's again, if you're interested in like working internationally, this is definitely the group to be part of. You know, whether you're a formal member of IUFRO or not, doesn't matter to this group. We won't tell the IUFRO that. But to be a member of IUFRO individually, it's not very expensive at all. I think it's about 115 euros. But many of your institutions are probably members. And so as an institutional member, you're automatically invited to participate in one of many working parties. So we work closely with a communications working group. I think there's a small scale forestry working group. And then of course, there's lots of science and policy and other working groups. So I encourage you to visit the IUFRO homepage, which I can share right now. And with that, it gives you a great idea of what's going on with the organization, with what's going on in other working groups. So again, highly encourage you to get involved. We in our working group are composed, they're all volunteers. And so we have a couple of our fellow coordinators, deputy directors on board with Bob Barden. Raise your hand, Bob. Bob's on board. And then Mark McGallis. We've got Alice Pulajanek from Slovenia, Antonio Brunelli from Italy, and then Nia, can't recall her last name, from Ireland. And so it's a good team, but we're always looking for more input, more interest, I know that the pandemic and the shutdown, slowdown of travel has really hampered our ability to get together, at least face to face. But we do want to get together. And in fact, our Italian and Slovenia compadres are willing to host us in the city of Trieste. I believe that's how you pronounce that. Trieste. And it's a beautiful city between the two countries. Hopefully you can make plans. We'd like to probably get a little survey out to figure out what the best time of year to hold the meeting, but we're looking at hopefully next fall of 2023. Typically it's been September and October, been good travel dates. But if hopefully you're on our UFRO mailing list. If not, Bob, if you wouldn't mind maybe putting your email address or mine in there so we make sure you're on our direct mailing list. We've cobbled together a bunch of different lists, but if you want to make sure you're on any kind of list for surveys on what we want to do with the organization or to get on the list to participate in this meeting next year, we will definitely send out announcements far and wide and solicit abstracts and presentations and posters and these kinds of things. So definitely excited about that opportunity. It sounds like from our hosts that it's one of the nicest convention towns in that part of the world. So put that on your tentative calendar for next fall. We hope to get more information on that as we move forward. What else do we have as far as major announcements? I think the IUFRO World Forestry Congress is in Stockholm, Sweden, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Bob? Do you remember? Yeah, Stockholm. That's actually not until 2024. So that would be June 23rd to 29th of 2024. And so that's another opportunity to get together at the international level. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities really to get involved and meet folks from all over the country. So I'll stop there. I hope you all enjoyed the conference. Would love to hear from you. If you have any input for us as coordinators of this working party, love to hear from you either via email or now if you'd like to unmute and say a few words, that'd be great. We do try to get some regular correspondence out. So there was a question about the next newsletter and we try to get that out at least a couple times a year. So we'll work on a newsletter here sometime this summer. So we'll solicit some information for that newsletter. Thanks, Bob. There's a link to the current conference also in the chat box.
This is good. Thank you.
You're welcome, Leslie. I'm hoping we get a chance to see each other. I guess some of us will be going to the ANREP meeting in a few weeks. So
Yeah, consider this the warm up.
that's right. Just getting back into the swing of things travel wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Coyle's gonna have some Bradford pears there to spread the word,
Spread the weed.
spread the weed.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I know, hadn't planned too much for the business meeting, but would love your feedback on what you think is important. I know if you look at our website, there was a directory that was developed several years ago. There was some terminology, a terminology document. There were, I think, a list of best practices. So I don't know, collectively, it'd be great to see what the opportunities are, what the needs might be. So would love to hear from you guys, what your interests are, why you're interested in international work.
Cool.
Well, I think we'll give you back an hour and a half of your day then, right? Unless there's anything, any burning issues. Bob will send out an evaluation. I don't know if it's in the chat box or not, but I guess as a registrant of the meeting, he's got you under his thumb, so he'll definitely be in touch with you on the program and how we can make this more useful to you. But a sincere round of applause for all the work that Bob and several at NC State did to kind of make this happen. It was a labor of love. It was a slog over 3 years. And we'll have other interim events from here on out, but this was very well done. Thank you, Bob. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for following through. I know it's hard when it keeps getting thrown back 4 times.
I don't know how many times we kicked this can down the road.
Yeah.
Glad we were able to at least do it virtually.
Yeah, it's good. It was a good warm up to ANREP too for those of us who are able to go as well. So and Hope, I really do want to see some of those poop bags at ANREP. So just gonna see what grade plastic you're looking at,
That's awesome. I won't be there, but I can send you stuff if you want.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Well, you could send someone from Utah State, with the best artifact.
I wonder if Mike Coons or anybody from Utah State's coming. Darren,
Yeah, Darren
McAvoy.
McAvoy or
that's right.
yeah, I'll have to ask around. Yeah, it sounds fun. This year just didn't work out, but hopefully next time I can go.
Well, great. Well, thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. There's top of Mark's head. Good to see you guys.
See you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Do well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Dale.
you.